Also, I guess as a summary, today we learned a lot about how nativeness can be defined in different ways. Mayumi offered us the perspective that probably in Japanese, accent is not such like a big issue in order for one to be considered native. In certain contexts, probably it is. So I guess what we learned today is also that, well, like John Ba also pointed out yesterday, we all have an accent and we are all prone to be judged positively or negatively, depending on the accent we have. And that in turn raises questions about how we should teach, I guess, English as a second language. That's what brought us.
So we also wanted to bring up the idea of, well, what are the implications, you know, what are the practical implementations of theory? And I speak to this very personally because I'm a practitioner who is now preparing to be a theorist and already building up ideas. You know, language teacher for more than 10 years now. And now I'm glad you mentioned our lecturers because the best teaching I ever had in my life on language teaching was in the Applied Linguistics department at UCLA by Linda Jensen, right there, who is the pedagogy queen. So, and it was wonderful to me, and I'm going to start crying too, that she mentioned good teaching. We should talk about the idea of good teaching. And good teaching to me is social justice. And to all of us, you know, we discuss this and we believe in this. When a good teacher who is culturally competent and also who is well-versed and well-trained in the work just slices through all kinds of barriers and obstacles that might occur linguistically or politically or otherwise. And so when we are out there and preparing teachers, which is what I hope to do in my future career, to teach teachers about language teaching and about language learners, that it is fundamentally important that we look at good teaching and our role in preparing good teachers as an act of social justice.
And before we move to a broader discussion with everybody, I know the name of our conference was Linguistic Diversity in American Classrooms, and we did talk in detail about what it's like in classrooms, but I think a lot of what we saw is that language socialization practices, pedagogy is happening all the time everywhere. So we're in a global classroom all the time. So to think more broadly about the multiple identities, like Professor Norton talked about, the multiple roles that we're shifting among and between daily, that we saw in Professor Oriana's work, that children are their parents' teachers, just as much as it goes the other way. And to see that students can be teaching their teachers just as much about their identities as teachers and as individuals. So I think it's important for us to think about that in this broader discussion and as we move next to this social move in applied linguistics and what do we do now. So in that vein, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Professor Judith Irvine's work on talk isn't cheap, and the idea that talk is action. And so I think our beginning here in having a dialogue and recognizing that this alone is just the dialogue and the collaboration is in and of itself action. So we shouldn't feel like, okay, we talked a whole bunch and that's good and we're going to leave and that's not enough. It is in fact doing social justice work. But we did want to talk about what now. and in terms of a call to action and what should applied linguists and others be doing with the information that we now have and the relationships that we've built this weekend.
And on that note, I just want to remind us, those of you that were here yesterday, the comment that came about media, and in particular with respect to Gustavo Arellana's work in writing columns, and the ways that lots of the hegemonic population gets really outraged and comments on what they believe to be the correct use or what should or shouldn't be used. Maybe we can then also celebrate what we see as diversity and positively comment on that, because that may have as much of an impact as the loud mouths, as he called it, or the bullhorn, as he called it also. Because if we're not going to be speaking up enough about those celebrations of hybridity or celebrations of alternative uses or diversity of language use, then we're letting one particular population determine how things are going to be understood by the majority. So at this point, we would just like to open it up to discussion and welcome your comments and questions to each other, to us, to
so maybe highlights of this conference, or what do you think the future dialogue should be?
Thank you. As a non-academic attendee, I have to say I'm totally in awe of the panel discussions and the presenters. It's incredible. All the discussion has illuminated what's going on in Arizona and what they actually trying to do with their policies. I have had a suspicion of what that is, but without all this scholarly work that you have presented, I could have an opinion that could be just influenced by my background